intelligent.
Where do you locate that so-called right to be included? They don't have the right. It's a civil rights issue of our day, it seems. And it's attacking the integrity of the sport.
You should take up the violin.
How much strength
A sport.
not blow your own head off?
I fight as hard as a man. I am a man. And I'm the state champ of female high school wrestling. I don't want to wrestle females. All I ever wanted to do was wrestle men.
There we go, attaboy.
I didn't even know what transgender was, but I would never turn my back on an athlete.
If you run the whole race like this, it's gonna be something to watch. Would it be fair to tell somebody that you have all of the rights and privileges of a given gender, except in this one situation? Either you do or you don't.
Would it be fair for me to be competing on the boys' team? No. I am a girl. That's who I am, no matter what.
I am a girl, and I deserve to be on the girls' team.
Why would you tell an adolescent that wants to pursue a dream and something that could change their life to tell them not to compete? I know I'm not doing it for anybody else, I'm doing it for me. I'm able to be me, and that's all I ever wanted to do. That's all I ever wanted to do.
In the new HBO Max show, Generation, I played Chester, a bold, queer teenager navigating high school alongside his found family of queer friends. Our show is a celebration of how far we've come as queer people and a celebration of Generation Z, the queerest generation to date. We sought out to represent queer love, queer family, queer angst, queer joy, queer humor, and queer freedom. But we are aware that that is not every teen's experience. Far too many queer kids are still struggling with being accepted by their communities, by their families, and by their society. Right now, there are abhorrent bills being passed at the state level across the country, attacking trans youth and their civil liberties. And while I want to encourage everyone to continue to fight in the ways our community has time and time again, I want to say to trans youth across the country and to all queer youth that the most radical thing that you can do in the face of people who want you to feel small is to be happy out loud and unapologetically, to laugh and smile and play games and make friends and live a full, joyous life. Because it is the goal of those who want you small for it to weigh on you and to make you angry and to depress you and to make you miserable. And I understand that in the face of oppression, the hardest thing to do is to find hope and happiness. But that is why it is the most powerful. I am so grateful to the HRC and all the work they do for queer youth by elevating the voices of young advocates through their Young Ambassador program, to stopping the epidemic of HIV amongst Black and brown queer men and trans women, to creating safe and welcoming schools across the country. They are a reminder that your community always has your back. No matter where you are in the country, no matter what identities you hold, Know that you can thrive authentically. Know that you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. And know that your safety, your well-being, and your happiness is the guiding light in all of this. And that should always be your priority.
Hello, I'm Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Thank you to HRC President Alfonso David for your friendship and continued leadership. And to the HRC staff, board members, and volunteers, I greatly appreciate the work that you do in the fight for equality. Our administration is proud of our long-standing partnership with HRC. We came together for 2 historic virtual events in 2020, the Mayor's LGBTQ Opportunity Fair and the Connecting Communities National LGBTQ Liaison Summit. The Opportunity Fair gave over 800 LGBTQ people access to affirming job opportunities and much-needed resources. Our Connecting Communities Summit brought together over 100 LGBTQ municipal liaisons and allied officials for a first-of-its-kind convening. Last year, I announced the appointment of Atlanta's first-ever Director of LGBTQ Affairs, Malik Brown, a proud member of HRC's National Board of Governors. This historic appointment marks the first of its kind in the South and only one of a small handful across the country. I was pleased to see Tori Cooper, a former member of our LGBTQ Advisory Board, joined HRC staff to lead work related to trans justice. You've likely seen my home state of Georgia in the news recently. First, for the tragic and senseless killings of 8 people, many of whom were women of Asian descent. Hate crimes against Asian people have been on the rise over the last year, and it's up to all of us to stand up against this epidemic. More recently, you've seen us in the news for a dangerous bill that was meant to suppress voter turnout at a time when we should be seeking to expand it. I recently signed an administrative order to expand voting access within the city of Atlanta and to use all of our resources to mitigate voter suppression for our constituents. Atlanta's own Congressman John Lewis made it his life's work to get into good trouble, fighting for things like voters' rights. I will continue to stand alongside each of you to fight voter suppression, not just in Atlanta, but across the United States. I will also continue to fight proudly alongside each of you in the fight for LGBTQ equality. Thank you for all that you do.
Hi, HRC. This is Senator Chuck Schumer, and I'm always excited to be with you at your events. Today's virtual, not as good as in person, but I'm glad to be with you in any way I can be. As we all know, this is a time for equality. After 4 years of Donald Trump and his bigoted, nasty agenda that targeted so many people in the LGBTQ community, we have an opportunity now to renew our country and affirm the values that bring out the best of what it means to be an American. Very soon, God willing, the COVID-19 crisis will come to an end as more and more Americans finally get vaccinated. Soon, our economy will open fully back up. And when that time comes, we can't be satisfied with just going back to the way things were before. We all need to work together to build a new foundation for our country, based on equality, justice, and true dignity for every American, no matter who they are, what they look like, or who they love. That's why I wholeheartedly support action on the Equality Act. This legislation's personal for me. Just 6 years ago, my daughter won the legal right to marry who she loved. The Equality Act would make sure that she and her wife can continue living with security and dignity of knowing she won't face discrimination because of who she is. I'll also fight to make sure we continue working on legislation to protect the rights of transgender Americans as well, who suffer higher rates of abuse, homelessness, and depression than almost any other group. I'm glad that President Biden named Dr. Rachel Levine as the new Assistant Secretary of HHS, the first transgender American ever to be confirmed by the United States Senate for a government post, and I'm glad to have helped get her nomination through in my new position as Majority Leader. Most of all, we must keep breaking barriers of ignorance and send the message that all people deserve dignity in this country no matter what. And that is what I will do every day that I serve as your Majority Leader. So thank you, my very best, stay healthy, stay safe.
Hi folks, my name is Rosemary Ketchum and I am a member of the Wheeling City Council here in the great state of West Virginia. I won my election last year and have been working really hard to make good on the promises I made as a candidate, working around issues including racial justice, affordable housing, public transit, and protecting our homeless community. And while I love the work that I do, and I do feel safe in the city of Wheeling, even I, as an elected official, do not have the same federal civil rights protections as my fellow members of council. That is why supporting the Equality Act is so critically important. Not only is it common sense legislation, but it's good for our culture, it's good for our economy, and ultimately it is good for our communities. I want to thank organizations like the Human Rights Campaign for their diligent work around issues like the Equality Act. And I want to ask you to call or email your U.S. senators and demand that they pass civil rights legislation to support the LGBT community, and that is the Equality Act. Thank you so much. I hope that you're doing well, and I hope to see everybody soon. Bye.
Hello, HRC. I'm proud to be a longtime ally, and I'm excited to continue working with you as California's newest United States Senator. In California, we look at equality, inclusivity, and diversity as strengths, and I'm excited to bring that perspective to Washington, D.C., and to be a strong voice for the rights of the LGBTQ community. I know that we have a lot of work to do, but we also have a lot of opportunity. We now have a presidential administration that truly believes in LGBTQ rights. In his first day in office, President Biden signed an executive order to combat discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation. Now it's time for Congress to act. Stronger federal civil rights protections for LGBTQ Americans are long overdue, and that starts with passing the Equality Act, which I'm proud to support. As too many state legislatures advance harmful legislation targeting young children and their access to proper medical care, know that I believe all Americans should be free from discrimination regardless of who they love or how they identify. And all Americans deserve equal protections under law that will prohibit discrimination in public places, services, and federally funded programs. I'm also proud to co-sponsor the Refund Equality Act, which will allow same-sex couples to file for federal income tax benefits they should have been eligible for prior to the Supreme Court's decision finding the Defense of Marriage Act unconstitutional. History will look kindly on those who stood for dignity, respect, and human rights. I'm proud to stand as an ally with you. Thank you for all your work, and please continue to stay safe.
The Human Rights Campaign is thrilled to present our National Visibility and Impact Award to the Emmy and Golden Globe nominated hit FX series, Pose. As the show enters its final season, we could not be prouder to honor this incredible show, its creators Ryan Murphy and Stephen Canals, and its cast and crew. We thank them for the visibility they bring to the LGBTQ community, particularly Black and Latinx transgender women and people living with HIV. To share more about the impact of Pose, please welcome two of the Human Rights Campaign's youth ambassadors, Viandre Mitchell and Avi Panchenko.
Thank you so much, Alfonso. It's an honor to be here presenting the National Visibility and Impact Award to the cast and creators of Pose. You know, this show resonates with me so much. As a young queer person of color, I faced rejection from my family and built my own family in the trans-dominated drag community in Hawaii. These beautiful, fierce humans became my greatest champions and challengers. We push each other and we praise each other. We call each other out and we call each other in. But most of all, we make ourselves visible so that others can find us and become part of our family too. Every single episode of Pose, I saw my chosen family up there on screen.
Like Avi, this show became a mirror for me. As a young Black Latinx trans woman, I was so fortunate to have a support system I needed at home. But I didn't see anybody else in the real world that looked like me. I can count on one hand, heck one finger, the number of shows that were made by Black and brown queer folks. The cast of Pose, the writers, the producers, gave us and the world a glimpse of full humanity within each episode. We need that. The door has been busted open from Pose and will never be closed. I am so grateful for that. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from Pose.
The category is
FX's Pose is a wonderfully crafted, beautiful, and meticulous show, especially in its recreation of New York in the 1980s.
When you look to the past, you can learn a lot about the present. HIV, AIDS, poverty, harassment, and violence are things that, they were dealing with in '87 as well as today.
Trans people are as old as time.
Focus, children. It is time we remind the world who we are.
I knew that this show was important and that it was relevant, that our audience, LGBTQ people, needed to know that their lives and their stories have value.
Shows like this that gives you a glimpse into the founding mothers and how the founding fathers came along and how they created these children in order for us to be here today. It's not just one story. And I feel like the world needs that in order for them to have more of a human experience.
Just be yourself. We must rally up all citizens to make an America filled with dreams, an America filled with all shades, and America that fights for all.
So somewhere along the way, we're taught to hate. That's not a natural state of who you are. We're not gonna be here forever. So while we're here, can we just have fun and just enjoy each other, enjoy life?
Ryan Murphy's Pose continues to make history, with the groundbreaking FX series being the first TV show with a mostly trans cast to be nominated in any category at the Golden Globes. The cable network drama, which explores the ballroom culture of 1980s New York, already broke the mold by featuring an unprecedented number of LGBTQ talent in front of and behind the camera, including 5 transgender women of color in series regular roles.
What we gotta say, Pose, it's making television history.
It's about love. And we talk about love, but we forget about humanity. I am a human being.
I mean, it's a really important show to a lot of people. This is the first time that so many people are seeing themselves represented on TV,
And once again, we witness history unfold. The Emmy goes to Billy Porter.
The category is love, y'all, love. I hope that young queer people of all colors can look at me and know that they can.
The landmark win makes him the first openly gay Black man to win the Emmy's Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series category.
I thought it was important that we memorialize people who have given me access to be able to be, the first trans woman of color to be hired in a Hollywood writer's room, the first to write and direct a television series, and to be on a television series and to share it with 5 Black and brown trans women of color who are the stars in the center of our show. Yeah, the fact that we have love stories on our show, the fact that we're not just merely points of trauma. And so here we have 5 women who have different dreams, who have love, who want desire, who want to be desired. And I hope that it doesn't only educate and inspire and entertain, but it also moves people to care and hopefully do something.
I demand that the world be our safe space. May we go out in it and endeavor to be and be seen as our full, beautiful selves without fear, without apology, and without the pressure of doing.
And the best thing we can do, I think, on a TV show is be an eye-opener. If you see someone on television, if that character can be your friend, it creates empathy in the world. Yeah. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do with Pose.
Hi, I'm Stephen Canals, co-creator, executive producer, writer, and director of Pose. Thank you, HRC, for recognizing the cast and producers. It's an honor to be receiving the National Visibility and Impact Award from the Human Rights Campaign, especially while you have Alphonso David as president, the first Black man to hold this position in the organization's 40-year history. Visibility is defined as the state of being able to see or be seen. In spite of being on the front lines of the equality movement, we queer and trans people of color have been invisible for far too long. With this award, what you're doing is saying, we see you. Now, I have a confession to make. While I have publicly said that Pose was conceived as a love story to queer and trans folks of color, to the ballroom community, to my beloved New York, and to myself, the truth is that Pose was born out of selfishness. When I wrote the first draft of Pose, the prompt from my writing instructor was to write the show you want to watch. We were bidding adieu to 2013, and we Black and Latinx queer and trans people weren't anywhere. We were still 6 months from Time magazine declaring the trans tipping point. And so I forged ahead with the first draft of a story about a young boy kicked out of his home for being gay, who was taken in by the mother that we all deserve. I wrote that first draft in 10 weeks, and I spent the next 30 months revising that draft, tweaking it, refining it, as I stepped foot into 166 meetings with hundreds of executives not quite seeing me, not quite seeing the vision. I was asked repeatedly, where does a show like this live? Who is the intended audience for a show like this? Pose was too much. It was too urban, the sensibility too queer, and it was a period piece. It took the tenacity of Sherry Marsh, the very first producer, to say, this is a show and we will get this made, to get that script to one Ryan Murphy, a prolific visionary, a true disruptor who immediately saw the vision and believed in it. He knew that we, who had been living on the margins for far too long, needed to step into the light. We needed to be visible. Pose made history before it ever aired, announcing that with its authentic casting, there would be not one, but 5 Black and Afro-Latinx trans women in series regular roles. And it's that kind of visibility that shows others what is truly possible. My collaborators, from Janet Mock to Our Lady J and Tina Mabry, have dedicated our lives to telling the stories of the LGBTQ+ community and to ensuring that the education of the next generation includes LGBTQ+ stories. I have been blessed enough to work with this incredible cast and crew to increase the visibility and representation of trans and queer Black and Latinx experiences while centering our often overlooked history. It is a rarity to find a story like ours told on a platform as large as FX. It just doesn't happen enough, not yet, but I'm hopeful. What a privilege it has been to tell this story, our story, a human story, rooted in universal themes of love and chosen family and resilience. I have known for years that this story needed to be told, and I'm so humbled that I've been able to help tell it alongside the talents of these amazing, fearless performers. I'm amazed how this cast has inhabited their roles so fully. The reason their performances feel so real, so lived in, is because they are dynamic, compassionate, fully realized people. And your visibility is going to save lives. It already has. I think about the young queer Black man who told me he went and got tested for HIV for the first time after watching our show. I think about the 60-year-old cancer survivor who was inspired to embrace her truth after watching our show during her treatments. I think about the mother who told me she wished Pose existed 20 years ago because it would have inspired her to be a different kind of mother. And she gets to right her wrongs through her relationship with her grandchildren. And I would be remiss if I didn't say there are still so many in our community who can't be visible. Visibility comes at too great a cost, and they can't afford to take that risk. I want to honor those individuals who can't be vocal by being a voice for them and saying, we see you and we honor you too. Finally, the real power, the real impact, the most important element of visibility will always be the action that it inspires. Trans people are still fighting for their right to exist. There is an unprecedented amount of legislation targeting trans youth nationwide. What are you going to do? Watching Pose isn't enough. If you love our beautiful Pose family, then you must show up to oppose hateful legislation that limits our community members' access to healthcare, to employment opportunities, to housing, and protections under the law. Contact your governors, contact lawmakers, make your voice heard, take action. It is through visibility, through representation, that we can change the world. And it is through praise from organizations like the Human Rights Campaign that the world may see just how important our stories have always been.
Stephen created the show, and everyone's contribution to it is such an intelligent way, a genius way to remind people who they are and their value.
Now people get to look at each and every last one of these women on the show and see that we can be exactly who we want to be, and also the things that we inhabit within us and what we've always had.
The main thing that I take away is that we truly have created a body of work that exalts love and understanding, and what that does after we leave set, what that does after the last final season of Pose, it carries on.
Visibility is important because it inspires the next person, and that person will inspire the next person. It's a ripple effect that keeps going on and on.
You think you've seen it all when you start off in 1974, but all of a sudden it's like a whole new revolution. It's amazing, and it's just been such an honor to be a part of this experience.
So in reflection, Pose is visibility, it is love, it is family, it is validation, it is acknowledgement. It is truth, it is in your face, and it is us showing the world that we don't need labels because we are talent.
Thank you, HRC, for this Visibility Award. And, like Kamala Harris says, we may have been the first, but we most definitely ain't gonna be the last.
Please support HRC's critical work. If we can reach $25,000 during our program, we have a generous donor who will double that by matching that amount. Please text GIVE to 472-472.
Hi, I want to talk to you today about the Equality Act and why it's so personally important to me. As a proud member of the LGBTQ community, I can tell you that the struggle for equality is far from over, and that the Equality Act works with existing legislation to help strengthen human rights. I can remember being a vulnerable, effeminate boy of 10 when we first moved to the United States, sensing danger, afraid that if people found out I was gay, I would be cast out, bullied, or worse. Years later, in my 20s, I was afraid again, because I was in love with a guy battling AIDS, and I saw firsthand the kind of discrimination he faced in employment and in the healthcare system. Many years later, thanks to HRC and LGBTQ and hero allies across the country, I was happily and legally married. And I remember the first time I was able to introduce Kyle as my husband. I felt the weight of that word, and I felt that I finally belonged to a human family. But unfortunately, in many states, a gay person could get married in the morning and fired and kicked out of their apartment in the afternoon. Transgender Black women have to live not just with discrimination, but with the fear of violence, sometimes death. Transgender children aren't allowed to play sports in school or use the bathroom. These are scars that will live with them forever. Look, we're not asking for special rights. We're just asking for what everyone else has: the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So stand with us and support the Equality Act by writing your member of Congress or your elected representatives, and if you can, give something to HRC to help in the fight. Y para mi comunidad latina, les pido que por favor respalden a la comunidad LGBTQ para que todos podamos tener el sueño y la libertad de los Estados Unidos. Muchas gracias.
Hi, I'm Jerry Ryan. Every person deserves to be treated equally under the law, but the sad reality that most people don't realize is that in 29 states, you can still be fired for being gay, lesbian, or transgender. You could even be denied housing. Yeah, in the United States, in 2021. And that is why it is so crucial that the Senate pass the Equality Act. 70% of Americans already support this legislation, including a majority of Republicans. But now we need to make our senators step up and support it as well. 22 states and more than 125 cities have already adopted these common sense protections for LGBTQ people. But your rights shouldn't depend on what zip code you live in. We all deserve to be judged on our merits, not the color of our skin or our sexual orientation or our gender identity. Please make your voice heard, contact your senators, and tell them to support the Equality Act.
So here's the tea. Growing up in the Midwest in the late 80s, early 90s, not to completely age myself, life was really just all about the status quo and sort of this heteronormative ideology of what the normal beauty standards were. And as a precocious, loudmouth, trash-talking, plus-size Barbie, I didn't really fit in with all of that. So I didn't really ever know where I fit in. That was, of course, until I found theater, which is also, incidentally, where I found and fell in love with the LGBTQI+ community. And it is what honestly set me free. It saved my life and made me a true individual, and I owe my life and everything to that priceless education. For me, the LGBTQI+ community is more than just about friendship. It's a family. It's a community that has lifted me and supported me and guided me and loved me in a sort of unbridled, unconditional sort of way. And the thing that was hardest for me to swallow at that time was that these incredible individuals, these educators, were not necessarily empowered or educated in the way that they were empowering and educating me to be who they were in the world. And even though we have come such a long way, and we really have come a long way, we still have so far to go, which is why this Equality Act is so incredibly imperative right now, and that this gets passed, because we all know this is not just about equality. This is about safety. This is about protection, because for some people, this is life and death. There are many parts of this country where we've passed some laws that protect the LGBTQI+ community, but there are still many, way too many parts of this country where it's not only unsafe, it is dangerous to be part of that community. And for me, part of being a true ally is more than just being a good Judy and Kiki and being like, "Grr." You have to be a real advocate and you have to use your voice. So I think the most important thing we can do right now is to call these senators and demand that they pass this law. Because these laws are imperative to the safety and livelihood to the community that we love. And one more wrongful termination, one more hate crime, one more senseless murder is one too many. These are common sense laws, and it's time for real change. It's just that simple.
Hi, everyone. I'm U.S. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, and I'm so glad to see so many people uniting for today's Time for Equality event. The last year has been tough for all Americans, and the LGBTQ community has faced unique challenges. And so, as we start to emerge from this pandemic, we must make sure that we're doing all we can to lift up our communities. And that means continuing to work toward real equality. I have been proud to stand with LGBTQ Nevadans throughout my career, standing up against the Trump administration's attacks on the LGBT community and helping to push the Equality Act to make sure that no one is discriminated against in work, housing, education, or public accommodations. Now that it's passed the House of Representatives, I'll do everything I can to help get it through the Senate as well. The state of Nevada has come so far when it comes to civil rights for everyone. In 2019, our legislature passed a slew of laws to protect LGBTQ Nevadans from discrimination in access to credit, healthcare, the criminal justice system, and more. We need to make sure everyone in America shares in these kinds of safeguards and that no one faces unequal treatment because of who they are and who they love. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act as quickly as possible. And I'll continue my work to protect everyone in the LGBTQ community and to stand up for the human rights of everyone. I know you will too. Thank you for everything you do and have a wonderful event.
Greetings to everyone attending today's Time for Equality National Spring Virtual event. Thank you to the Human Rights Campaign for hosting and for tirelessly championing the rights of LGBTQ Americans. I'm Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, and since 2015, I've been the proud sponsor in the Senate of the Equality Act, which would make discrimination against LGBTQ Americans illegal throughout the United States. President Johnson once said that here in America, freedom is the right to share fully and equally in American society, to be treated in every part of our national life as a person equal in dignity and promise to all others. From our imperfect beginning, America's story has been one of striving generation after generation to ensure that kind of freedom LBJ spoke of for every American. From the abolition of slavery, the Civil Rights Act, the suffrage movement, women's liberation movement, labor movement, environmental movement, and so much more. Yet, in spite of how far we have come, we still have an enormous way to go. Because here in America, millions of LGBTQ Americans are not free. They do not share fully and equally in our national life or be treated as individuals equal in dignity and promise to all others. It is still legal in 29 states, right at this moment, to discriminate against people because of who they are or whom they love. And it's way past time to change that. As we watch efforts in states like Arkansas and Mississippi, where attacks are occurring on the basic rights of transgender Americans, it just reinforces the urgent need for change. Twice now, the House has risen to meet this challenge by passing the Equality Act. And I applaud Speaker Pelosi and Congressman Cicilline and all the rest of my House colleagues for this historic accomplishment. But up till now, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, we haven't seen progress in the Senate. But 2021 is different. Different leadership in the executive office of the United States, different leadership in the Senate. We have leaders in charge in the House, the Senate, and the Oval Office who support freedom and equality for all Americans. And we have more organizations and businesses endorsing the Equality Act than ever before. Over 600 organizations, including 51 national religiously affiliated organizations, and more than 300 businesses operating in all 50 states that employ over 12.4 million workers. There's a lot of momentum in this pursuit of freedom for all Americans. This is our moment. So together, let's seize this moment and pass the Equality Act in the Senate. Make this year the year we succeed in ringing the bells of freedom by ending discrimination and ensuring the doors of opportunity are flung wide open for all. Or as President Johnson phrased it, let's ensure every American has the right to share fully and equally in American society, to be treated